The pain of being ignored or disrespected by a child can be devastating, especially when you have devoted so much love, care, and sacrifice to raising them. But why does this relationship become so difficult? How do you deal with disappointments and regain your inner peace? In this video, we'll explore 7 transformative steps to face this challenging situation, based on the wisdom of Stoicism. We'll talk about how to free yourself from the poison of expectations, set boundaries, accept what can't be changed, and much more. Each step has been designed to help you regain serenity and strength, even in the face of difficulties. Stay until the end, because the last step is fundamental to living fully, regardless of your child's actions. Without further ado, let's get started. Step 1. Free yourself from the poison of unfulfilled expectations. Have you ever found yourself thinking that your child should be more grateful? After so many sleepless nights, worries, and sacrifices, it's natural to expect respect and affection in return. Instead, you're met with short answers, indifference, or even reproaches. This pain is not just about your actions as a mother, but about your identity. Stoic philosophy teaches us that expectations, especially unspoken ones, are one of the greatest sources of suffering. By doing everything for your child, you may have built up an idea of how they should reciprocate your love. But when those expectations don't come true, the sense of loss is overwhelming. Seneca said that the greatest impediment to living is the expectation that depends on tomorrow and wastes today. When we attach ourselves to what we believe should happen, we distance ourselves from the present and from what we can really control. Epictetus' lesson on the dichotomy of control becomes a valuable tool here. We can't decide how our children will react or what they will think. If we base our happiness on expectations, we are putting our well-being in the hands of something that never belonged to us. To break free from this cycle, start reflecting on what actually causes your pain. Think about the times you've expected your child to react in a specific way or to recognize your sacrifices. A clear example is that of Maria, who dreamed of having her son close by, but ended up distancing herself. By accepting that she couldn't control his life, Maria began to find peace in her own ability to value herself. The poison of unfulfilled expectations destroys her inner peace. True freedom and serenity lie in accepting things as they are, not as you would like them to be. Step 2. When love shouldn't become an emotional debt. As a mother, it's natural to give love and care unconditionally from the moment your child is born. Every sacrifice and effort is driven by a deep love. However, over time, this love can turn into an unverbalized expectation that your child owes you something in return. This emotional debt, if left unmanaged, can become a source of bitterness. When we dedicate our lives to raising and caring for our children, it's easy to fall into the trap of expecting something in return. Love that is given with the expectation of return is not truly unconditional. It becomes an emotional debt that your child may feel, even if you never mention it. This sense of obligation can lead to resistance and withdrawal. Marcus Aurelius said that we should do good willingly and without expecting anything in return. True love, according to the Stoics, is that which is given for the simple act of loving. When we give expecting something in return, we create a commercial exchange, not a genuine relationship. An example is Rosa, who gave herself completely to her children, expecting them to take care of her in her old age. When her son moved away, Rosa began to feel abandoned. Their relationship became strained and resentment grew. Stoic philosophy teaches us to be conscious of our expectations. We cannot control how our children perceive our sacrifices. True love demands no return. By letting go of the expectation of receiving something in return, you free your child from emotional debt and yourself from resentment. This doesn't mean accepting abuse, but rather that your emotional well-being shouldn't depend on what you receive from others, but rather on the inner peace that comes from knowing that you did the right thing. Step 3. Set boundaries to cultivate healthy relationships. It's painful, but often the lack of love or respect between mother and child stems from a lack of clear boundaries. As a mother, you may have given everything without conditions, forgetting that healthy relationships are built on love and limits. From birth, you feel responsible for your child's well-being, but if you don't set limits, they can get used to always receiving without learning to appreciate. Marcus Aurelius said that we should love everyone, but trust only the few who deserve it. Loving your children is natural, but that doesn't mean allowing everything. Without limits, disaffection can arise, because you may have taught them that it's acceptable to take without valuing what they receive. Carmen, for example, was always available to her son, but he began to assume that everything she did was an obligation. When Carmen tried to set limits, her son took offense. The lack of limits made him interpret this as a personal attack. Stoic philosophy teaches us about the importance of self-control. Saying no and setting limits is not selfish, but a demonstration of self-love. Limits protect your mental health and teach your child to value what you offer. By setting limits, you say, "I love you, but my well-being also matters." A lack of boundaries opens the door to disaffection. By setting them, you not only protect your inner peace, but also teach your child that love must be respected. Step 4. Accept that not everyone can offer recognition. One of a mother's greatest sorrows can come from the expectation of recognition or gratitude that never arrives. You've given love, sacrifices, and time. But what about when that recognition doesn't come? Stoic philosophy invites us to reflect on something crucial. Not everyone has the capacity to recognize what others do for them. This doesn't mean that they don't love you, but it can be related to your own emotional limitations. Teresa, for example, supported her daughter in everything, but felt that she never received recognition. What hurt her was not her daughter's actions, but the lack of recognition. When we seek gratitude from those who can't offer it, we feed resentment. The expectation that our sacrifices will be appreciated creates an invisible barrier that blocks genuine connection. True recognition cannot come from the outside. You can control how you perceive your own value. Recognizing that you acted out of love is enough. Marcus Aurelius said that the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. If you look to your child for validation, you plunge into a spiral of frustration. By deciding that your actions have value without depending on external recognition, you free yourself. This change of perspective is essential for your inner peace. No longer seeking recognition doesn't mean that you don't love, but that you live in peace without the gratitude of others determining your well-being. Step 5. Develop your emotional independence. One of the pillars of living fully, especially in family relationships, is developing emotional independence. Many mothers place their emotional well-being in the hands of their children, without realizing that this dependence can become a source of suffering. If your happiness depends on how your child treats you, you are putting yourself in a vulnerable position. Stoic philosophy teaches us that true freedom lies not in what we possess, but in how we respond to what happens around us. Epictetus said that no one is free unless they own themselves. Often, without realizing it, we cede our inner peace to the actions of our children. This expectation makes us dependent on what is out of our control. Emotional independence doesn't mean you stop loving, but that your peace doesn't depend on your child's actions. Marco Aurelio reminds us that we must choose not to be hurt. This choice is not indifference, but internal fortitude. You can't control whether your child respects or thanks you, but you can control how it affects you. True emotional independence begins when you recognize that your value does not depend on what others do, but on your ability to remain serene. By no longer tying your emotions to your child's actions, you regain control over your well-being. To strengthen this independence, start living in the present. Seneca warns us that the greatest impediment to living is the expectation of tomorrow. If you wait for your child to do something that makes you feel better, you'll miss the opportunity to enjoy what you already have. Inner peace does not lie in what is to come, but in how you live now. Step 6. The art of accepting what cannot be changed. One of the biggest challenges as a mother is to accept that despite everything you've done, there are aspects of your child's life and behavior that you can't control. The protective instinct leads us to want to influence their path. But Stoic philosophy teaches us that accepting what we cannot change is the key to serenity. Epictetus teaches us that there are things that depend on us and things that do not. Your child's actions and decisions are out of your control. Marcus Aurelius said that we should love what we are fortunate enough to have, because that is what we have. Accepting that your child is an individual with their own free will is liberating. This doesn't mean that you agree with their decisions, but that fighting the inevitable only leads to suffering. Imagine that your relationship with your child is like sailing a boat in a storm. You can't control the waves, but you can control how you steer. If you cling to the idea that you have to change the course of the storm, you will only experience frustration. Accepting the circumstances allows you to adjust your sails and sail calmly. The practice of premeditation malorum, or thinking about difficulties in advance, prepares you to accept what you cannot change. Accepting that your child will not always act as you expect frees you from constant frustration. This acceptance is not resignation, but a focus on changing your perspective. Ask yourself, what can I do to improve my inner peace? Part of this acceptance is recognizing that you cannot take responsibility for your child's decisions. Epictetus reminds us that it's not what happens, but how we react that matters. A clear example is to stop insisting that your child show gratitude. Accepting that this is not within your emotional capacity doesn't mean that you conform, but that you stop fighting against a reality that you can't change now. Accepting what you can't change frees you from unnecessary tension and suffering. Step 7. Choose serenity over resentment. We've come to one of the most important lessons in a complicated mother-child relationship: the conscious decision to live with serenity instead of letting resentment take over. When you feel ignored or unappreciated, resentment can arise naturally as a defense against emotional pain. Stoicism offers us a way out: to choose inner peace, even when circumstances are not as we would like them to be. Marcus Aurelius said that we should choose not to be hurt. Emotional suffering doesn't come directly from what others do, but from how we interpret and react to those actions. If you let your child's words or indifference affect your peace of mind, you are giving them the power to determine your mental state. Resentment is the result of accumulating small frustrations and unfulfilled expectations. Every time your child doesn't act as you expect, a layer of resentment builds up. This feeling can become an emotional barrier that damages your relationship and prevents you from finding peace. Resentment doesn't punish those who don't value you, but it consumes you. The Stoic lesson of serenity teaches us that although we can't change our child's behavior, we can choose how to react. Instead of focusing on what's missing, you can change your perspective. Resentment is a burden that only you can release. Imagine what would happen if you decided to let go of this weight. A practical exercise suggested by Stoicism is negative visualization. Anticipate worst-case scenarios, not to depress yourself, but to prepare yourself emotionally. By imagining that your child won't change, you begin to let go of expectations. This active acceptance doesn't mean resignation, but freedom. By letting go of resentment, you can enjoy the present without the shadow of unfulfilled expectations. You can choose to focus on what you have, your health, friendships, and passions. Serenity comes when you stop expecting the world or your child to give you what you think you deserve and start living fully with what you have. This change doesn't ignore difficulties, but shifts your focus to what is under your control, your attitude, thoughts, and reactions. In doing so, you free your child from the emotional burden they may be feeling, making room for a freer, less tense relationship. True emotional freedom lies not in changing others, but in changing your relationship with expectations and the emotions that arise from them. By choosing serenity, you transform your relationship with your child and find the inner peace you so desperately seek. We've come to the end of this video, where we've explored the 7 Stoic steps for dealing with challenging mother-child relationships. We've seen how letting go of unfulfilled expectations, setting healthy boundaries, cultivating emotional independence, and choosing serenity over resentment can transform your emotional life. Stoicism teaches us that we can't control the actions of others, but we can change how we react to them. Now it's your turn to put these lessons into practice and regain your peace of mind. If this content was useful, like it, share it, and subscribe to the channel for more reflections that inspire. Until the next video, and may your journey be filled with peace and inner strength.